Nearly 30 years ago, Nigel Benn and Chris Eubank fought for the second and final time, ending the biggest British rivalry in recent years. Following in their footsteps, both Chris Eubank Jr. and Conor Benn would join the boxing ring. Decades later, eager to carve legacies of their own, the impact of their father's epic rivalry would frequently loom over their careers. And with it being announced that the two would finally square off in April of 2025, we take a closer look at this mega bout and see what pivotal moments have led them to this point in their careers. This is a Chris Eubank Jr. versus Conor Benn fight preview. To understand the significance of this super fight, we take a look at one of its fighters, Chris Eubank Jr. Holding a record of 34 victories and only 3 defeats, Eubank Jr. has established himself as one of Britain's most exciting fighters.
Good counter shot there from Eubank Jr. And just as I say that, he puts him on his back with a lovely, sharp, short right hand. He was caught a little bit squared. You've been stalking DeGale. Right hand, left.
I am who I say I am. I'm not a pretender. I'm not a fake. I do the things I say I'm going to do.
Name Monster leaves a trail of destruction in the ring. Too big, too strong, too good.
And with Eubank Jr.'s success in the ring, it would be only fair to view his career defeats as well. He would enter 2014 with a perfect record of 18 victories and no defeats. His scheduled opponent would arrive as Billy Joe Saunders. Hailing from a Romani traveller family, Saunders would also hold a perfect record of 20 wins and no defeats.
He is undefeated in his campaign with a record of 18 wins, no losses, 13 wins coming by way of knockout. Chris Eubank Jr. with a record of 20 wins, no losses, 11 wins coming by way of knockout. The undefeated British, European, and Commonwealth middleweight champion, Billy Joe
Saunders would be defending his British, Commonwealth and European titles. Being the naturally fleet-footed fighter between the two, Saunders would jump in and out of range, making Eubank Jr. fall short of his punches.
That's another nice body shot from Saunders. He's outboxing him right now.
Eubank Jr. would continue to attack with aggression, trapping Saunders on the ropes and landing heavy punches.
Wants to make it into a brawl, has to try and take him out. Landed the big clean shot, there he does! Great uppercut!
Saunders would continue to comfortably box on the back foot, keeping Eubank Jr. at a distance. A split decision victory, Saunders would hand Eubank Jr. his first career loss. Vowing to return stronger, Eubank Jr. would string together a number of victories over good fighters, but most impressively against the former super middleweight champion, Arthur Abraham. Eubank Jr. would be granted his first world title opportunity against the WBA super middleweight world champion, George Groves, the semi-final of the World Boxing Super Series tournament. Both George Groves and Chris Eubank Jr. would engage in a high-paced battle throughout the fight.
Anything easy, Chris Eubank Jr., as I say that. The fact that he's able to throw George Groves, but it was most certainly a scoring with a big left hook that caught George Groves. And then Eubank is caught, and now this fire.
Suffering a dislocation of his left shoulder in the final round, Groves would be forced to retreat, allowing Eubank Jr. to attack him with a blistering onslaught. Despite this setback, George Groves will go on to retain his super middleweight titles by unanimous decision. This would see Chris Eubank Jr. handed his second career defeat. Conor Benn would enter 2025 with an unbeaten record of 23 victories and no defeats. Known for his high output, offensive style, Conor Benn would quickly capture the eye of the boxing world. After victories over world-ranked contenders, such as Samuel Vargas and Adrian Granados in 2021, Conor Benn would look to move into a world title position. It was agreed that Conor Benn was scheduled to fight in December of 2021 against Chris Algieri. Former WBO junior welterweight world champion, Algieri was hoping to once again position himself for a world title opportunity.
Fighting out of Green Lawn, New York, here is the Fighting Collegian, the pride of Huntington, the former WBO junior welterweight champion of the world, Chris Algieri. fighting out of Ilford, Essex, England, is the popular and hard-hitting, reigning, defending, undefeated WBA Continental Welterweight Champion, Conor the Destroyer Benn.
A fast and aggressive start by Conor Benn would see him keep the former champion on the back foot.
The attack, and that's a good shot over the top from Benn. Sneaky right hand get through from Algieri. A sign that he's got plenty of power. Switching the attack from the body to the head. Landing solidly. Benn to unload so that maybe he can pick him up later in the contest. And a brilliant leg hook from Conor Benn. Lands solidly on the chin of Algieri.
Oh, good one. Two and he's down.
Left-right combination. And it is all over in an instant. He was waiting for the opportunity. He picked his opportunity. The left jab, the right hand over the top. But wins the referee.
A one-punch brutal knockout, Conor Benn would stop the former champion in the fourth round with a devastating right hand.
You know, listen, I hope the Yanks now know that I'm the best fighter in Britain, number one, and number two, I'm coming for them.
Chris Eubank Jr. would be given another high-profile fight in 2019 against the former world champion, Britain's James DeGale. Capturing a gold at the 2008 Olympics, DeGale would go on to win the IBF Super Middleweight World Championship. A slick southpaw, DeGale's defensive style as well as his precision punching would enable him to be recognized as one of the best fighters of his division. However, back-to-back, grueling fights would take a toll on James DeGale and see him diminishing from his former self. The fight was scheduled to take place on the 23rd of February at the O2 Arena in London, England.
Here we go with the main event of the evening, 12 rounds of boxing. It's showtime! The record stands at 27 wins, 2 losses, with 21 wins coming by way of knockout. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the former British middleweight champion and the former IBO Super Middleweight World Champion, known as Next Gen, introducing the colorful Chris Eubank Jr. With a record of 25 wins, 2 losses, and 1 draw, he has 15 of his wins coming by way of knockout. Here is the first British boxer to win both Olympic gold and a world title, former 2-time IBF Super Middleweight Champion of the world, introducing James Turki DeGale.
So let's just have a good, clean fight, okay? Most of all, remember to defend yourselves at all times, alright? George Close. Keep
knowing a certain danger, a certain truth that the rival possesses.
An aggressive start by Chris Eubank Jr. would see him throwing combinations in the first round, not allowing DeGale to begin any momentum.
Chopping right hand by Eubank, he's coming forward. Left, he hurt him! He hurt DeGale, he is really hurt. Now the right hand, he caught him with a big right hand. I thought he might have got wobbled, then the right hand. Left hook, wobbled him right there. Left hook, knocked him right into the ropes. Watch the left. The left hook did it this time.
A one-sided beatdown. The former champion was unable to respond to Eubank Jr.'s vicious onslaught. A winner by unanimous decision, Chris Eubank Jr. would obtain his biggest career victory. And with a bout between Chris Eubank Jr. and Conor Benn being talked about for many years, the two were finally set to square off for the 8th of October, 2022.
This fight is an absolute monster. The biggest in British boxing, perhaps one of the biggest ever in the sport in this country.
This is a fight that makes sense for now. You know, the world title's still the goal, but you can't, this is once in a lifetime. This is a fantasy fight for the British public.
And now, 30 years later, their sons are going to get in the ring.
Genuine rivalry is that it never really ends, it never really goes away. It's waiting for the perfect time to be reignited. On the 8th of October, live on DAZN pay-per-view, the Benn Eubank rivalry will be reignited as a fight that none of us expected to happen will happen.
It was announced on the 5th of October 2022 that Conor Benn had failed 2 drug tests just days before their scheduled bout.
Fight this weekend is off. Ben failed a drugs test.
Even in the lead up to this fight, my tests have come up negative. So my team will find out as to why there's been an initial adverse finding in my test.
Despite Ben pleading his innocence, he had tested positive for the banned substance clomiphene in 2 separate tests with the voluntary anti-doping agency, WADA, an infertility drug. Its prohibition within sports is due to his ability to increase muscle mass in males. After a lengthy investigation, Conor Benn was found to be guilty by the British Boxing Board of Control and the United Kingdom Anti-Doping Agency. And with the bout being cancelled, Eubank Jr was forced to find options elsewhere. In a sudden turn of events, it would be announced that Eubank Jr would take on Liam Smith, a former WBO light middleweight world champion. Known for his durability, Liam Smith's high output, pressure style was considered as a dangerous assignment for Eubank Jr.
I fought better fights than Chris. I've been on bigger stages than Chris. I've been on bigger stages than this before.
He's a dirty fighter. He uses his head, he uses his elbows. I've got to be aware of that. And the referee has to be aware of that.
As expected, Eubank Jr would start the fight on the back foot. Using a ramrod-like jab, he would keep his opponent at a distance. Smith would react with aggression, stalking Eubank Jr, attacking him with a variety of power punches. A vicious combination by Liam Smith would send Eubank Jr crashing into the ropes in round 4, eventually sending him to the canvas. Visibly unstable, Smith would unleash a barrage of punches, sending Eubank Jr crashing onto the floor once again. Seeing enough, the referee would wave the fight off. A spectacular victory for Liam Smith. He would look to head into a rematch with Eubank Jr towards the end of 2023.
Liam Smith and Eubank Jr will run it back. Same venue, AO Arena, Manchester, live on Sky Sports box office. Now this time, it's Smith versus Eubank, not the other way around. The immovable object, the Eubank chin, which has been tested before and never failed, was breached in a dramatic and explosive 4th round. Will it be repeat or will it be revenge?
It's part of the game. It's part of growing as a fighter. And now we get to do it again to make sure that we really know who the better fighter is.
Liam Smith and Eubank Jr will once again battle it out over 12 rounds or less at the AO Arena, Manchester.
Never been dropped, never touched down. All them things happened to him on one night tonight on the turn. So yeah, it was a good night for me.
And it's about how strong you can come back. A lot of guys can't come back after a loss, after a big loss, you know. It breaks them, it breaks their spirit, it breaks their confidence, it breaks their, their rhythm. For me, it just makes me more determined.
Eubank Jr would begin the bout with caution, keeping Liam Smith at a distance, dominating early on with a sniper-like jab. A contrast to the first fight, Liam Smith would have no answer to Eubank Jr.'s offensive onslaught. Unable to gain momentum, Liam Smith would hit the canvas en route to the fight being stopped by the referee in the 10th round. A career-defining victory for Eubank Jr. He would now look to target the division's champions. After spending more than a year outside of the ring, Conor Benn would make his comeback in September of 2023. Relinquishing his British boxing license, Benn's bout would take place in Orlando, Florida. A tough, gritty battle, Conor Benn would capture his first victory after being unable to fight professionally. He would then return to the ring 5 months later, this time against the New York-born fighter Peter Dobson. Fighting in Las Vegas, Nevada, Benn would continue his American campaign due to him being unable to compete in the UK. The fight would begin with Benn on the front foot, closing the distance, aggressively attacking Dobson early on.
Pushing the action, looking for the shot, stalking his opponent.
Dobson would valiantly fight back, throwing a mixture of hard and fast punches, trying to catch Benn in between his flurries.
We're going to see if he tests the chin of Conor Benn in this fight.
A back and forward, high-paced, grueling battle. Both Benn and Dobson would have their moments, headed into the later rounds.
Still on the front foot, still looking for the big right hand.
Unanimous decision victory. Conor Benn would look to move into 2025, hoping to secure the Eubank Jr fight. Eubank Jr would return in October of 2024, this time against Kamil Szeremeta, A former European middleweight champion, the Polish-born fighter's 2 defeats came to Gennady Golovkin and Jaime Munguia, fighting on the undercard of Artur Beterbiev and Dmitry Bivol. It would be Eubank Jr.'s first time competing within the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Wanting to put on a spectacle, Eubank Jr. would begin the bout in quick fashion, flashing a constant jab, hoping to set up Szeremeta for the right hand.
Szeremeta touching down.
And with his fellow rival Conor Benn in attendance, he was cautiously viewing the bout, in hope his countryman gains the victory.
Not a lot of there. Obviously that.
A dominant display of boxing, Eubank Jr. would score 4 knockdowns en route to a 7th round stoppage victory.
He will wave it off. Chris Eubank Jr. has won it and picked up his 25th knockout in the process.
With the winner being announced, Benn would enter the ring, hoping to secure his next fight.
Talk about what's next. I think what's next, hop in the ring before this fight was even over. Hopefully, we get that fight next.
And with Conor Benn being cleared to box within the WBC rankings, it potentially meant that Benn would be allowed to once again fight within the UK against his bitter rival.
WBC investigation. They found no conclusive evidence that Benn intentionally or knowingly ingested the banned substance. The fighter's initial defence was that there was a failure in procedures and at the testing laboratory. Well, that argument has been contradicted with the investigation finding no evidence of that. The WBC used an expert nutritionist to help with analysis and concluded that Benn's elevated consumption of eggs was a contributing factor.
Saturday, April 26th, setting the stage for a family rivalry like no other. Chris Eubank Jr. versus Conor Benn.
You're going to try and use me to get back into the public's good graces. It's just not going to happen for you, kid.
Excited to just get in April 26th and end this man's career.
With the British audience craving this styles matchup, it would finally be announced for April the 26th, a fight that took years in the making. Tensions were brewing high within the two camps.
It's a rare combination. The athletic fighter who can punch and has some skills and is tough and is willing to use those skills aggressively. Killer robot. He programs what he has to do and just executes the plan, and the other guy's flat on his back.
It's the kind of style that usually makes good fights. When you get a guy who's bringing it against a guy who knows how to box, those styles usually wind up making the kind of fight you would hope that it would live up to the billing.
We know how relentless he is. We know how hard he punches. He's so aggressive. He's such a destructive machine. He will have the mental resiliency, the mental endurance, continue to do what he has to do when the fire comes, when the moment comes. And that moment's going to come.
Because of the way boxing is structured, we get the fight that we didn't ask for, but the fight that we're getting and we're not mad at.
They say out of 8 billion people on Earth, not a single one of them has had the same experiences in life as each other. For Chris Eubank Jr. and Conor Benn, both burdened to carry the legacy of their fathers, share that same experience. For Conor Benn, he looks to silence his bitter rival and propel his career to greater heights. For Chris Eubank Jr., he looks to prove to the boxing world that his boxing career is far from over. On April the 26th in a sold-out arena at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, both Eubank Jr. and Benn will enter the ring, but only one will leave as the winner.